The station never truly slept. Day and night meant nothing in deep space. But the lights of Orion Trade Station stayed bright all the time. Cargo ships came and went. Traders shouted in open markets. Service drones moved through the halls with mechanical speed. Metal doors opened and closed every few seconds. Voices from many worlds mixed together into one endless sound. To most people, it was just another busy day. To Ethan Cole, it was another long shift. He was a human maintenance officer, one of the many workers who kept the station running. He fixed broken doors, damaged wires, air filters, leaking pipes, and sometimes problems much worse than all of those. It was not glamorous work, but it mattered. If systems failed in space, people died. Ethan understood that better than most. That morning, he was carrying a tool case and walking through one of the lower service corridors. It was quieter there than in the public decks above. The walls were plain gray metal. Pipes ran along the ceiling. Old warning lights blinked near power panels. The hum of machines filled the air like a low, constant whisper. Ethan liked these corridors. They were simple, honest. Nothing pretended to be more important than it. He had just finished repairing a faulty coolant line when he noticed something strange ahead. Someone was sitting on the floor near a wall panel at first. He thought it might be a station worker taking a break. But as he got closer, he slowed down. It was a young alien female. She sat very still, with her back against the cold metal wall. Her arms were wrapped around herself as if she was trying to hold herself together. Her head was lowered, long silver blue. Strands of hair, or something close to hair, fell across part of her face. Her clothes were clean but plain, and the badge on her chest was turned slightly inward, as if she did not want anyone reading it. Ethan recognized her species, though only barely. They were called the Velour. They were known across several systems for their intelligence, calm manners, and strict social customs. Most people said the Velour were graceful, almost elegant, in everything they did, but the girl in the corridor did not look graceful. She looked small, not in size. In spirit, people passed through public decks all the time with tired faces, angry eyes, or heavy shoulders. Ethan had seen fear before. He had seen loneliness too. Life in space created both, but this was different. The girl did not just look sad. She looked like someone who had already accepted that she did not matter. Ethan stopped walking. He told himself to keep going. On a place like Orion Station, that was usually the smart choice. People from different species had different customs, different rules, and different private pain. Humans already had a reputation for getting involved in things that were not their business. Ethan had no wish to create trouble during a maintenance shift, so he started walking again. Then he heard her whisper. It was so soft he almost missed it. "I'm defective." Ethan stopped as if the words had physically struck him. For a second, the station noise seemed to fade. He turned his head back toward her. She had not noticed him, or maybe she had and simply did not care anymore. Her voice was quiet, broken, almost empty. Not angry, not dramatic, just tired. Tired in a way that sounded old, even though she looked young. Ethan frowned. Defective. He looked at her more carefully now. There was no visible injury, no damaged breathing mask, no blood, no sign of sickness. She looked healthy enough. More than that, she looked normal. Different from a human, of course, but not damaged. Her features were fine, balanced, almost delicate. Her skin had a faint, luminous tone common to the Velouri, and her posture, even in sadness, still carried some natural grace. There was nothing about her that looked broken, so why had she said it? Like that? Ethan shifted his grip on the tool case. He knew he should keep moving. He had repairs to finish, reports to file. A supervisor who already thought humans spent too much time talking and not enough time working. Still, His feet refused to move. He had heard many cruel things in his life, but there was something about hearing a person say those words about themselves that felt worse than any insult. It meant someone had told them that lie so many times they had finally started believing it. The girl lowered her head even more. Her shoulders tightened. One of her hands trembled. Only then did Ethan notice faint marks on the sleeve of her uniform. The fabric had been cleaned, but not perfectly. There were thin, dark lines across it, almost like old stains or damage. And near the edge of her station badge, someone had scratched a symbol so lightly it was hard to see. Not an accident, Ethan. Thought someone had done that on purpose? He felt something cold settle in his chest. Bullying was common enough on stations. Quiet cruelty was everywhere. It crossed species lines more easily than trade routes did. But the pain in that one whispered sentence told him this had been going on for a long time. Ethan took a slow breath. He looked down the corridor, empty. He looked back at the girl. She still had not moved. He knew this was the moment. Walk away. And this became one more sad thing in a hard universe. Step closer, and it became his problem too. Most people on the station would have chosen the first. Option Ethan was human. That often made the second option impossible to ignore. He set his tool case down quietly on the floor so he would not startle her. Then he took one careful step forward. The reaction was instant. The alien girl flinched hard, as if she had been struck before. Her head snapped up. Wide silver eyes locked onto him with pure fear. She pressed herself back against the wall, her breathing suddenly sharp and fast. For one stunned moment, Ethan saw not just sadness in her face, but panic, as if being seen was dangerous, as if being approached was worse. And in that moment, Ethan understood one simple thing. Whatever had happened to this girl, it was far worse than he had first imagined. Lyra moved like a frightened animal trapped in a narrow cage. Her silver eyes stayed fixed on Ethan as if she expected him to shout, "Grab her," or call someone else. Her breathing was quick and uneven. One trembling hand pressed against the wall behind her, searching for support, while the other held the front of her uniform tightly. Ethan did not move any closer. He lifted both hands slowly, showing her he meant no harm. "It's okay," he said in a calm voice. "I'm not going to hurt you." The girl said nothing. She only stared up close. Ethan could see that she was even younger than he had first thought. Not a child, but not much older than. A human in early adulthood. Her face had the smooth, fine features of the velour, but there was deep exhaustion in her eyes. It was the kind of tiredness that sleep could not fix. The corridor hummed softly around them. Somewhere far above, a transport cart rattled across a cargo track. The station was still alive, still loud, still moving. But in that small gray hallway, the world had narrowed to two people, and one moment neither of them understood. Ethan kept his voice gentle. "I just heard you," he said. "That's all." She swallowed, but still did not answer. He glanced at the scratched mark near her badge again. It bothered him more now. He had seen symbols like that before on stations, small signs used by cruel people to mark someone as weak, unwanted, or shameful. Different species had different versions, but the meaning was usually the same. He looked back at her face. "No one should be sitting alone in a service corridor looking like that," he said. "Especially not if they need help." The girl's lips parted slightly. For a second, Ethan thought she might speak. Instead, she lowered her eyes and whispered, "You should leave." The words were quiet, but they carried fear, not anger. Ethan frowned. Why? Her fingers tightened on her uniform. "Because if someone sees you talking to me, they may think badly of you." That answer caught him off guard. Think badly of me, he repeated. She gave a tiny nod. Yes. Ethan looked around the empty corridor again, then back at her. Why would anyone think badly of me just for talking to you? This time, she was silent for so long that he almost believed she would not answer. Then, in a voice that sounded painfully practiced, she said, "Because I am defective." She spoke the word as if it was not an opinion, not an insult, but a final fact. A truth carved into stone. Ethan felt a wave of anger, not at her, but at whoever had put that belief inside her. He crouched down slowly, keeping a respectful distance so he would not seem threatening. "What's your name?" Her eyes lifted. To him again, uncertain. He waited. At last, she said, "Lyra." "Lyra," Ethan repeated softly. "I'm Ethan." She looked confused, as if she did not understand why he was introducing himself. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Ethan gave a small shrug. "Now we're not strangers." The line was simple, almost awkward, but it had an effect. The fear in her face did not vanish, but it shifted a little, just enough for him to notice. Lyra looked down at her hands. "You should not be kind to me." "Why not?" "Because it will only make things worse." "For who?" Her voice dropped. "Even lower. For both of us." Ethan leaned back slightly, thinking, "Lyra, I don't understand what's happening here. You don't look hurt. You don't look dangerous. And you definitely don't look defective." The moment he said that, her whole body went still. She stared at him, not with fear this time. With shock, Ethan realized he had stepped into something deeper than he knew, but he kept going carefully. What happened? Lyra's throat moved as she swallowed again. Then, slowly, like someone forced to open an old wound, she began to speak. "The Valori do not allow flaws," she said. "Not in duty, not in behavior, not in design." Lyra did not blink. For a long, heavy moment, she looked at Ethan as if the world around them had vanished. The low hum of the station, the distant noise of passing machinery, even the cold metal walls of the corridor seemed to fade into nothing. Only those two words remained. "You're perfect." Ethan saw the color leave her face. Her lips parted slightly, but no sound came out. One of her hands slipped from her uniform and pressed against the wall as if she suddenly needed it to stay standing. Her silver eyes searched his face, not with simple surprise, but with a kind of disbelief so deep it almost looked painful. Ethan straightened slowly. "Lyra?" he asked. Still, she did not answer. He replayed the moment in his head. He had only meant to comfort her. Human beings said things like that all the time. Maybe not in those exact words, but close enough. It was normal, kind, simple. So why did she look like he had just changed the shape of her entire life? "Did I say something wrong?" he asked carefully. Lyra finally breathed in, a sharp, shaky breath that sounded almost like a gasp. Then she looked away from him at once, as if holding his gaze had become too difficult. "You must not say that," she whispered. Ethan frowned. "Why?" Her voice dropped lower. "Not to me." The answer only made him more confused. "I don't understand." "No," she said, stepping back from the wall at last. "You do not." Her body language had changed again. She was still afraid, but it was no longer the same fear as before. This new fear carried urgency. It was the look of someone who had just heard a door unlock and did not know whether freedom or disaster waited on the other side. Ethan took one slow step forward, stopping when he saw her tense. "Lyra, if I crossed some line, I didn't mean to. I was just trying to say, I know what you were trying to say." She interrupted softly. Her eyes lifted to his again, and this time there was something fragile in them. Not hope, exactly. Hope was too strong a word for something so new and uncertain. It was more like the first tiny crack in a wall built over many years. "That is why it is dangerous," she said. Ethan glanced down the corridor, half expecting someone to appear and explain all this. No one came. The station remained indifferent. Somewhere above them, a vent released a short burst of air with a dry hiss. He looked back at her. Dangerous to who? Lyra's fingers curled slightly at her sides. To me, to you, to anyone. Who hears it? He stared at her. It's just a compliment. For the first time, something almost like sadness touched her expression. For humans, maybe. Then she moved quickly. She bent down, snatched up a small data pad Ethan had not noticed near her feet, and pressed it against her chest. The motion was nervous, almost desperate, as if she needed to hold on to something solid before she fell apart. Ethan watched her carefully. "Lyra, tell me what's going on." She hesitated. The silence stretched between them until Ethan thought she might refuse. Then, in a voice thin with tension, she said, "Among the Valori, perfection is not casual speech." Ethan said nothing. It is not praise. It is not comfort. It is not said lightly. Her eyes flickered toward him and then away again. To declare someone perfect is serious. How serious? Lyra swallowed. Sacred. That word landed. Hard. Ethan blinked. Sacred? She nodded once. The phrase belongs to formal bond language. Family vows, life pledges, certain legal declarations, ancient ceremonial rites. She paused, struggling to steady her voice. It is not spoken to one outside those meanings. Ethan felt his stomach sink. He had stepped into alien culture before by mistake. Wrong hand gestures, wrong eye contact, wrong seating order at diplomatic meals. But this was not some small social error. If Lyra was telling the truth, then his simple attempt at kindness might sound very different to the wrong ears. He rubbed a hand across the back of his neck. "I didn't know." "I know," she said. The words held no anger. That somehow made things worse. Ethan let out a quiet breath. "Then I'm sorry." Lyra looked at him strangely. "Why?" "Because I made things harder for you." 4. A second, she just stared. Then her expression shifted in a way he did not expect. Her eyes softened, and the fear there mixed with something even more dangerous. Emotion. Not pain this time. Not exactly. Something warmer. "You are the first one," she whispered. Ethan frowned. First one to do what? To say anything kind before apologizing for speaking to me. The simple honesty of it struck him harder than he was ready for. Before he could answer, Lyra stepped back again. Her face grew tense. She looked past him toward the end of the corridor, where a small station camera blinked its quiet blue light near the ceiling. Ethan followed her gaze. His chest tightened. The camera was old, built into the corridor for maintenance, security, but it was active. The blue light meant it had been recording the whole time. He muttered under his breath. Great. Lyra's grip on the datapad became so tight her knuckles changed color. It may have transmitted already. To who? She gave him a look. That answered the question without words. Her people, maybe station command too. Maybe anyone with access. Ethan's mind began moving quickly now. One conversation in a quiet corridor no longer felt private. The Valori treated those words as ceremonial or legal. Then a recording could create problems he had never imagined. He opened his mouth to say something reassuring, but before he could speak, a sharp sound came from Lyra's wrist unit. A signal alert. She looked down at it and went still. What is it? Ethan asked, very slowly. She turned the screen toward herself. A line of Valori script flashed across it in bright silver text. Ethan could not read the language, but he did not need translation to understand her reaction. All warmth vanished. From her face, her fear came back stronger than before. "Lyra," Aki said. She stepped away from him again, this time with purpose. "I have been summoned," she whispered. "By who?" Her voice was barely audible. "Internal Envoy Office." Ethan felt a cold weight settle in his chest. That did not sound like a friendly invitation. Lyra looked at him one last time. There was confusion in her eyes now, and fear, but underneath both was something else, something fragile that had not been there before he spoke. "I?" Question? Maybe even the beginning of belief. Then she turned and started walking down the corridor. "Lyra." "Wait," Ethan called. She stopped, but did not turn. "Around? You really think those words changed something?" he asked. For a few seconds, she stood completely still. Then, without facing him, she answered in a voice so soft it almost disappeared into the station's endless hum. "They already have. Quoi?" And then she walked away, leaving Ethan alone under the quiet blue light of the recording camera, with the growing sense that one simple sentence had just opened a door neither of them could close. Ethan had been in trouble before. He had once shut down half a cargo dock by cutting power to the wrong repair grid. Another time, he had argued with a station officer over safety rules and nearly been written up for unhelpful human attitude. But those had been ordinary problems. Annoying, embarrassing, temporary. What waited for him now felt different. 3 hours after Lyra walked away, Ethan was still trying to focus on his work. When his wrist lit up with a sharp red signal, "Report to station command immediately." No explanation. No delay option. No name attached. That alone was bad. He stood in a maintenance bay staring at the message while 2 service drones moved crates behind him. For one foolish second, he considered pretending he had not seen it. Then the message, repeated, now marked with command priority. So he grabbed his jacket, locked his tool case, and started toward the central command. Level with a feeling in his stomach that grew worse with every step. The upper decks of Orion's trade station were brighter than the lower service halls. The walls were polished. Floor lights ran in clean blue lines. Official staff moved quickly through wide corridors, trying not to look at anyone too long. Through one curved viewing panel, Ethan caught a distant glimpse of stars and passing ship lights beyond the station hall. Normally, he liked that view. Today, he barely noticed it. By the time he reached command, 2 security officers were already waiting outside the chamber doors. One was human. The other belonged to a reptilian species with dark green scales and hard yellow eyes. Neither looked friendly. "Ethan Cole?" the human officer asked. Ethan nodded. "That's me. You are expected." That was all they said. The command chamber doors slid open, and Ethan walked inside. The room was cold, wide, and far too quiet. A long curved table stood at the center, lit from beneath by pale white strips. Screens floated in the air above it, showing station seals, diplomatic notices, and legal codes Ethan had never bothered to read. At the far side of the room stood Commander Hale, a sharp-faced woman with silver hair and the permanent expression of someone who had lost patience years ago. But it was not Commander Hale who held Ethan's attention. It was the 3 Valori. Standing beside her, their clothing was formal, layered in dark blue and silver, marked with elegant patterns that probably meant something important. Their posture was perfect. Their faces were calm in the way only very angry people sometimes became. And there, standing a little apart from them, was Lyra. She looked smaller than she had in the corridor, not because she had changed, because the room had changed around her. Here, under the cold command lights and the watchful eyes of her own people, she seemed surrounded by invisible pressure. Her hands were folded too tightly in front of her. Her gaze remained lowered. She did not look at Ethan when he entered. "Commander." Hale gestured toward an open space.
The room exploded into silence. It was the kind of silence that felt louder than shouting. Commander Hawley did not speak. The two Valori envoys stood as still as carved stone. Lyra's face had gone pale, and her hands were clenched so tightly that the thin tendons in her wrists stood out under her glowing skin. Ethan was the first one to move. "What does that mean?" he asked. No one answered him. He looked directly at Envoy Saren. "You said corrective review. What does that mean?" Saren did not even blink. "That is an internal Valori matter." "That's not an answer. It is the only answer you require." Ethan felt heat rise in his chest. He had heard enough polite voices on stations to know when soft words were being used to hide something ugly. Internal matter. Corrective review. Formal significance. People always wrapped cruelty in clean language when they wanted it to sound reasonable. He turned to Commander Hawley. "You're going to let them take her?" Hale's expression stayed hard. "This station recognizes cultural sovereignty within legal treaty bounds." Ethan stared at her. "She's scared." Hale's jaw tightened, but she did not deny it. Saren spoke again. "Fear is irrelevant." That was the wrong thing to say in front of a human. Ethan stepped forward before anyone could stop him. "Fear is never irrelevant." At once, one of the security officers moved closer, but Commander Hawley raised a hand without looking away from. "Ethan, stand down, Mr. Cole," she said. "No." The word came out before he could soften it. Every eye in the room shifted toward him. Ethan could feel the danger of that one refusal, but he did not care anymore. He looked at Lyra. She still had not spoken again. She looked trapped between terror and disbelief, as if some part of her had expected this outcome all along. That more than anything made him angry. "How many times has this happened?" he asked, now looking at the Valori. "How many people have you called defective and then quietly sent away for correction?" Saren's expression hardened. "You are not in a position to question Valori law. Then maybe your law deserves questioning." Commander Hale's voice cut through the air like a blade. "Enough." Ethan forced himself to stop speaking, but only because he could tell one more word might get him removed from the room. Hawley looked at Lyra. "Do you wish to object to transfer?" Lyra's lips parted, then closed again. Her eyes flicked once toward the Valori envoys. That single glance told Ethan everything. She was not free to answer honestly, not here, not with them standing over her. Saren saw it too. The marked one understands her obligations. Marked one, not even her name. Ethan looked at Lyra, really looked at her, and saw something he had missed before. Beneath the fear, beneath the shame forced onto her for years, there was exhaustion. Deep exhaustion. The kind that came from fighting too long with no reason to believe winning was possible. But then her gaze moved to him, only for a second. Still, something passed between them. Not trust. Not yet, but maybe the beginning of it. Commander Hawley ended the meeting with a cold efficiency that made Ethan want to hit something. "This review is suspended for 1 hour pending treaty confirmation. Lyra will remain under temporary station supervision. Envoys, you will have your decision shortly." Saren inclined his head. "We expect compliance." The Valori turned and walked out together. Their steps were graceful, calm, and completely without doubt. Lyra was guided toward a side exit by station security. She did not resist. At the door, she glanced back once. Ethan caught that look, and it hit him harder than any speech. It was not a plea. It was worse. It was the look of someone already preparing to disappear. The moment the door shut behind her, Ethan spun toward Commander Hawley. "You know they're lying." Hawley looked tired for the first time all meeting. "Careful." "No. You be careful." You heard her. She was terrified. Hawley lowered her voice. "And you think I do not see that? Then do something." She held his gaze for a long moment. Station command does not have the power to rewrite another species' internal law because one maintenance officer feels strongly Ethan took a step closer. What if it's not internal law? What if it's abuse with better vocabulary? That landed. Hale's face did not change much, but enough. Finally, she said, "If you have evidence of unlawful coercion, bring it. Until then, this remains diplomatic territory." Ethan let out a sharp breath. "So that's it? That depends on what you do next." He understood the message hidden under her tone. She could not openly help him, but she had not told him to stop. That was enough. Minutes later, Ethan was back in the lower station levels, walking fast through service halls with his comm unit open. He sent 3 messages. The first went to Mira Voss, a human medical technician who knew more station gossip than any database. The second went to Jonas Pike, a cargo pilot with too many favors owed to him and too much free time between runs. Third went to Tareen Sol, a records clerk in station administration who loved rules but hated injustice even more. If Ethan was going to find out what corrective review really meant, he would need help. He got it fast. Myra answered first. "Meet in Med Sublevel C 10 minutes. Bring coffee." Jonas answered next. "If this is illegal, dangerous, or stupid, I'm in." Tareen took longer, but his reply was the most useful. "Valori sealed files are restricted. That usually means someone doesn't want patterns noticed." By the time Ethan reached Med Sublevel C, his anger had become focused. Mira was waiting in a side office with a portable screen already active. She was short, sharp-eyed, and brilliant in the dangerous way that often made officials nervous. Jonas leaned against a cabinet drinking station coffee like it had personally insulted him. Tareen stood near the door with 3 data chips in hand and worry written all over his face. Ethan told them everything. He expected shock. What he got was worse. Recognition. Myra was the first to speak. "I've seen Valori patients before. Quiet ones, too quiet. Some had stress indicators off the charts, but they refused to explain anything." Jonas folded his arms. "I've hauled diplomatic cargo for them. Their people never travel alone if they can help it, unless they're low status." Tareen slid one of the data chips into the screen. "I checked transfer logs. Over the last 6 years, 17 Valori marked as biological or cognitive deviations were removed from mixed stations under sealed authority." Ethan stared at him. 17? Tareen nodded grimly. "No public records after transfer." The room went very still. Mira looked up from the screen. "That's not correction." Jonas muttered the truth none of them wanted to say first. "That's disappearance." Ethan felt cold anger settle in his chest like steel. Good. Steel was useful. He looked at the others and made his choice. We're not letting them take her. By midnight, the 4 humans had turned a forgotten medical office into a war room. The lights were dim. A cooling fan rattled in one corner. Empty drink packs and data slates covered the desk. On the center screen, Tareen had built a growing map of names, transfer dates, sealed orders, and missing records. Thin blue lines connected one file to another until the pattern became impossible to ignore. 17 names. 17 Valori labeled with careful words like variation, instability, developmental error, or social misalignment, and then silence. No public follow-up, no medical updates, no legal hearings, no family claims. They were simply gone. Jonas stared at the screen and shook his head. How does a whole station not notice this? Mira answered without looking up. Because stations notice everything and care about nothing unless it causes paperwork. It was a bitter joke, but no one smiled. Ethan stood with both hands pressed against the edge of the desk, reading the names again and again. Each one felt like a quiet grave. He could not stop thinking about Lyra in the corridor, whispering the word defective as if she had said it to herself 1,000 times before. How many of these missing people had done the same? Tareen opened another file. I found something else. Everyone looked up. He enlarged a set of internal Valori health Notes. Most of the text was translated poorly, but some terms repeated often enough to become clear. Increased emotional response, Tarin read. Independent pattern deviation. Elevated abstract processing. Non-compliant identity formation, Jonas blinked. That sounds less like illness and more like someone describing a teenager. Mira leaned closer to the screen. Or a creative mind, or anyone who asks hard questions. Ethan looked from one file to the next. They're not removing people because they're dangerous. They're removing them because they don't fit. No one argued. That was the truth sitting in front of them. The Valori had built a society that worshipped order so completely. It treated difference like contamination, not weakness. Not sickness. Threat. Myra sat back slowly. If this gets out, it won't just embarrass their envoys. It could crack their whole public image. Jonas gave a short, humorless laugh. Good. Tarin looked much less pleased. Or it could start a diplomatic incident big enough to crush all of us. Ethan met his eyes. Maybe, but if we do nothing, Lyra disappears. That ended the argument. For the next hour they worked in silence, moving through records, medical summaries, station logs, and old travel manifests. The more they found, the worse it looked. The missing Valori were not random cases. They shared traits. Emotional sensitivity, unusual curiosity, resistance to standard response training. Some were artists, some were junior analysts. One had written a public essay questioning hereditary rank before vanishing 2 weeks later. Different, Ethan thought. That was their crime. Orion Trade Station woke up angry. At first, it was only a whisper moving through private channels. A clipped audio file. A hidden medical note. A list of names passed from one screen to another with no official stamp and no permission. Then came Lyra's recorded statement, released through 3 anonymous accounts at once so security could not stop it quickly. Within 20 minutes, everyone was talking. Cargo crews played the clip in loading bays. Night shift med staff shared it over encrypted channels. Pilots waiting for departure windows sent it ship to ship. Traders in the upper markets lowered their voices and leaned over tables, repeating the same words again and again. If that is madness, then perhaps sanity has become a prison. By the time Station Command realized what was happening, the story had already spread too far. Ethan stood in the crowded maintenance office watching messages flood every open screen. Some were shocked, some were angry. Some came from beings who had never cared about the Valori before, but cared very much about injustice. Others came from Valori themselves, using hidden names and masked locations. I thought I was alone. My brother was taken. They told us she had entered treatment. She never returned. The files are real. Keep going. Mira read them over Ethan's shoulder and whispered, "It's bigger than we thought." No one answered because there was nothing to say. The truth was already speaking for itself. Then the station alarms changed. Not full emergency. Something colder. A command alert flashed across every public screen. Unauthorized data breach. All diplomatic personnel proceed to secure holding. Jonas checked the corridor feed and cursed. They're moving. On the screen, security teams were heading toward level 12. For one terrible second, Ethan thought they were going to Lyra. Then Tarin zoomed in and exhaled sharply. No, not security, Valori private guards. That was worse. Commander Halle had delayed the transfer for review. The envoys had decided not to wait. Ethan grabbed his jacket. Come on. They ran. The station corridors blurred into flashes of light, steel walls, and startled faces turning as the 4 humans pushed through the crowd. Somewhere overhead, public voices repeated calm instructions no one was listening to. The whole station felt unstable now, as if one hidden crack had suddenly spread through every deck at once. When they reached level 12, the main diplomatic hall was already packed. Station security blocked one side. On the other, 3 Valori. Guards stood outside a sealed guest chamber with Envoy Saren behind them, calm as ever. As if this were all a simple scheduling matter, in the middle of it all stood Commander Hawley. Her expression was stone. Ethan slowed only enough to avoid being tackled by security. "Commander," she turned sharply. Her eyes landed on him, then on Mira, Jonas, and Tareen behind him. "You," she said, sounding equal parts furious and relieved. "I should have guessed." Saren stepped forward. "This disturbance is the result of human interference. We are now executing lawful transfer." Hawley did not look at him. "No, Envoy. At this point, you are attempting extraction during an active station inquiry." Saren's face remained calm, but something darker moved under it now. "The marked individual belongs to Valori jurisdiction." "Her name is Lyra," Ethan said. This time Saren did look at him. "Your continued involvement has already caused enough damage." Ethan felt a strange, clear calm settle over him. Good. That one word cut deeper than shouting. More people were gathering now, crew, workers, off-duty staff, even travelers who had no business being there, but had heard enough to understand what kind of moment this was. Phones and recorders lifted into the air. Eyes watched from every angle. The envoys had wanted a quiet transfer. There would be no quiet now. Mira stepped up beside Ethan and held out her med badge. "I have recorded signs of coercion and sedation preparation against a detainee under Mixed Species Welfare Code." Tareen raised a data slate. "And I have archived station transfer records linking 17 prior removals to sealed authority without due review." Jonas folded his arms. "And I have a cargo union channel with about 2,000 angry listeners waiting to hear if this station helps people disappear." For the first time, Saren looked uncertain, only a little, but enough. Commander Hawley turned to the watching crowd, then to the nearest camera drone. When she spoke, her voice carried across the whole corridor. "Pending full inquiry, all transfer. Authority regarding Lyra of the Valori is suspended. She will remain under station protection." The crowd reacted at once. Not cheering exactly, but a sharp wave of sound rolled through the hall. Relief, approval, release. Saren stepped forward, controlled fury now visible in every line of his face. "This is a treaty violation." Hawley finally turned to face him. "Fully, no, Envoy. This is what happens when too many people witness something ugly at the same time." Then the guest chamber door opened. Every head turned. Lyra stepped out slowly. She wore the same plain station clothes, but something about her had changed. The fear was still there. No one could go through all this and not be afraid, but she was no longer bent under it. Her shoulders were straight, her chin was lifted. Her silver eyes moved across the crowd, the guards, the envoys, and finally rested. On Ethan. Silence fell. Saren's voice turned cold. "You do not understand what you are destroying." Lyra answered before anyone else could. "No," she said. "I understand now what was destroying me." The words hit with quiet force. She stepped forward, out from the shadow of her own people, and faced the cameras. "They told me I was defective," she said. "They told others the same. They hid us because we felt too deeply, questioned too freely, and did not fit the shape they wanted." Her voice trembled once, then steadied. "A human spoke one kind sentence to me in a corridor, and I saw the lie for the first time." Ethan felt his chest tighten. Lyra looked directly into the cameras now, as if speaking not just to the station, but to every hidden person listening in fear somewhere beyond it. "Worth is not given by those in power," she said. "It already belongs to us." No one interrupted her. No one dared. Later, long after the envoys were removed, the guards disarmed, the files seized, and the station calmed enough to breathe again, Ethan found Lyra standing near a viewing panel looking out at the stars. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Ethan rubbed the back of his neck awkwardly. I think I owe you an apology, Lyra turned slightly. For what? For saying the wrong thing, for making this harder, for... He gave a small helpless shrug. All of it. She studied him for a second, then a faint smile touched her face. It was not the wrong thing, she said softly. Ethan looked at her. Lyra's eyes moved back to the stars. It was the first true thing anyone ever said to me. And in that quiet moment, Ethan understood something simple and dangerous. About humans in a cold galaxy full of rules. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness was enough to start a revolution.